Adonai, ma adam v'te'adehu. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up, renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, "Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we would understand whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, behold the upright. They shall have peace."
Death has taken our beloved Margo Adams. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them. For Margo's love that united us in life, and which death will never be able to sever, for her companionship that we shared along the paths of life, and which continues now through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart and her mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give thanks to God. In this time of grief, we can listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells of our kinship with our Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Reading for the 23rd Psalm. I'll read it first in Hebrew, and if you'd like to join me in the English, you may do so. Adonai ro'i lo echsar benot desha yarbitzeni, amei menuchot yan hileni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'ma'aglei tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech b'gei tzal mavet lo irara ki ata imadi, shiftacha u'mishantecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shochan neged sorarai, v'shanta v'shemen roshi, kosi rivaya, ach tov v'chesed, yerdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
God, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains came into being, before you brought forth earth and world, from eternity to eternity you are God. You return us to dust, you decree, return, you mortals. For in your sight 1,000 years are as yesterday when it has passed, as a watch in the night. You engulf us in sleep. We are like grass that renews itself. At daybreak it flourishes anew, and at dusk it withers and dries up. The span of our life is 80 years and 10, or, given strength, 80 years. But the best of those years have trouble and sorrow. They pass by speedily, and we are in darkness. Teach us, therefore, to number our days, so that way we may attain a heart of wisdom. Turn to us, God, and show your mercy. Satisfy us at daybreak with your steadfast love, that we may sing for joy all of our days. Let your deeds be seen by your servants, your glory by their children. May you favor, O God, and may your favor be upon us. Establish the work of our hands, that it may long endure. As we continue to listen to the words of the psalmists giving us comfort and perspective, we hear the words of Psalm 121. I'll sing the first line of it. Esaenai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Osei shamayim va'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains and ask, what is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. The protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. As we continue to listen to the words of our tradition, there is a newer adaptation. We've been listening to the words of psalm texts, but we always turn to Ecclesiastes, or in Hebrew, Kohelet, who kind of meditates on the polar opposites that we experience throughout our lives, right? A time to be born and a time to die, a time to speak, a time to keep silence. And there's a rabbi today named Rabbi Louis John Aaron, who created a kind of a meditative B part to the Ecclesiastes text. So Rabbi Levy and I are going to read this kind of poetic interpretation, both hearing the old and hearing the new as we celebrate Margo today.
To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die.
Death complements birth. They form the bookends of life. Resting between them is a life filled with an abundance of things to see, to feel, to touch, to taste, to understand, to do.
There is a time to plant.
We envision a future and a time to harvest, a time to see one's dreams fulfilled.
A time to kill.
Weeding a garden, breaking a fall, stopping aggression, completing a task, closing a chapter.
And a time to heal.
Binding a wound, blotting a tear, forgiving a mistake, returning home.
There is a time to break down the walls that confine us.
Setting us free.
And a time to build the bridges that connect us.
Binding us together.
There is a time to weep and a time to laugh.
And sometimes weeping and laughing arrive as one, when memory brings joy and absence brings sorrow.
There is a time to mourn.
Marching to the solemn beat of a funeral procession.
And a time to dance.
Turning and spinning at a wedding.
There is a time to cast away stones.
Clearing a field for planting.
And a time to gather those stones together.
To build a house or cover a grave. There's a time to hold a loved one tightly, never wanting to let go, and a time to release one's embrace and set one's dear one free.
A time to seek.
To look for answers and chase a goal and to pursue ambition.
And a time to lose.
A time to accept failure and to forgive wrongs and to move on. There's a time to keep as we build our lives and fill our homes, and a time to cast away as we let go that which holds us back.
A time to rend.
A time to tear our garments in grief.
And a time to sew.
Mending them again, but the seam will always remain.
There is a time to keep silence.
Listening to our hearts.
And a time to speak.
Sharing our thoughts with others.
There is a time to love.
Bringing close that which enriches our lives, and a time to hate. Distancing ourselves from those who diminish us.
There is a time of strife because no life is without struggle, and a time of peace when all is done, when all is complete, when our days are full, when the story is told, when we are all together, when the circle is made whole.
Moment upon moment, everything is but for a moment, says Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, the preacher. So let us cherish this moment, each moment, and all the moments we share and shared. Together we say, Amen. There's an inspirational lyric from my personal favorite singer-songwriter, Harry Chapin. That may come as a surprise to some of you. And as I thought about Margo over the past few days and prepared for this morning, I was drawn to an adapted lyric. It was written for a man, but I changed it to woman. I was drawn to this lyric from one of his songs from 1978, which seemed so fitting as we celebrate Margo. The lyric says, "Now if a woman tried to take her time on earth and prove before she died what one woman's life could be worth, well, I wonder what would happen to this world. Well, I wonder what would happen to this world." In Judaism, we're taught that death is part of the divine pattern of the universe. But more than just being part of a pattern, death is a moment of awareness for all of us, because we go about our daily lives free from the existential reality that all life will eventually end. But it's moments like this, when we confront the death of a beloved friend, a beloved family member, that this fantasy of immortality is punctuated with awareness. It's in this moment that we are taught not to despair, rather we are taught to embrace life more than ever. And so we learn from Margo's death that life is indeed precious, not because we have too much time, but because we have too little. So let us not waste a moment. Well, I wonder what would happen to this world. So this morning, as we celebrate the life of Margo, we're going to be hearing the words of a number of words of memory from a number of her family. And we're going to begin with my esteemed colleague, our Rabbi Emeritus here at Bethel, Rabbi Gene Levy, to share some thoughts.
With thanks to Rabbi Katz for the honor of inviting me to join him here. I believe it was Bobby's and my very first Friday night Shabbat service back in 1975 that I led here at Temple Bethel. I was a bit nervous, my very first service, for many reasons, not the least of which was, you see, it was in my high school years in youth group that I had a girlfriend from Austin by the name of Margo Hirsch. And here, all these years later, I had heard that a Margo Hirsch was a member of Bethel Tyler. How ironic. Had it been the same one after all these many years? It was not. Maybe thank God. But a special relationship developed that lasted some 46 years. Margo was one of those rare folks who felt totally comfortable in so many different spheres of life. She was active here at Bethel her entire Tyler life, serving on the board, serving as president, serving as cemetery chair, sisterhood president, youth group advisor, high holiday reception host, and volunteer for just about anything that came along. And Margo was equally comfortable in Tyler society and in Tyler cultural life, especially the Rose Festival and East Texas Hospice, who, by the way, so lovingly cared for Margo during these last 4 or 5 days. Even after Bobby and I moved to Little Rock, we kept up with Margo. Among others, we would chat by phone maybe monthly, and Margo was one of those on my weekly Shabbat Shalom list on text. We caught up on phone on all the who's, whens, and wheres, and you know that Margo always was interested in the who's, the whens, and the wheres of Temple and Jewish life and Tyler life. And then each conversation would end something like this. Well, Margo, we've been to Tyler 1,400 times as of now. When are you coming? When are you going to return the favor and come visit us in Little Rock? Her answer, well, I need first to go visit Brian. Then the next call, yeah, you know, but I'm off to visit Susan. And then the next call, come visit us, and she said, no, I'm going to visit William and then Kathryn. And this repeated and repeated and repeated until we just took it for granted that Little Rock was not going to be part of Margo's GPS. All this is to say that family meant everything to Margo. Though she had hundreds of friends, as noted by the folks here and on virtual view, her kids and later her grandkids were the most precious commodities in her life. In this way, Margo shone just as the last lights of Hanukkah began to flicker as she was beginning to end her journey here on earth. With you, it's hard to imagine a Tyler, a Bethel, and yes, a world without the vivaciousness of Margo. And so, Margo, you know that Bobby and I loved you very much. And even though you were not destined to make it to Little Rock, we wanted you to know that Little Rock came back here today to bid you a fond shalom and to say merely thank you for who you are and who you were and who you will always be. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. The righteous will always be remembered for blessing. Amen.
Rabbi Levy thanked me for inviting him up here. Let's be clear. First off, of course, always. But secondly, it was never an option, right? Margo was very clear who was going to be here today. So, again, I didn't need the push, but this was much Margo's love for him to be here as mine. In Jewish tradition, there's a relationship in Hebrew between the word build, which is boneh, and the word children, bonim. If you hear the word boneh, bonim. So the rabbis of old teach us that because of these two words, boneh and bonim, build, and children, that because they come from the same root, they reveal a deeper truth. And that deeper truth is that it is through our children, bonim, that we are built. Because our children offer us the opportunity to carry on our values, our dreams, our particular idiosyncrasies and worldviews. We are boneh, built up through our bonim, children. And so today we look to the Adams kids and their spouses and the 11 grandchildren, and then we see Margo's legacy. We see her estate. And when you look at this wonderful family, you get a sense of what it means to have real estate. And Margo knew that her real estate lay with her family. And so we're going to welcome up some of her children first. So Susan and Kathryn, if you'll come up and share some memories, and then I'll invite the rest up after.
I was really struggling with what I was going to say today, and if I would actually be able to get up and speak. I remembered this journal that I'd recently given my mom about everything she means to me. So I'm going to read it, and I'm not going to look up. One quote she always told me was, "Don't sweat the small stuff, and remember, small people, small problems. Big people, big problems, Susan." There are a ton of things I'm really going to miss, but most importantly was our daily chats on the way to work. We talked every single day. Her wisdom, anytime I had a question about etiquette, or really anything, big or small, she was the one I would call. She was my personal Siri. One of my favorite memories is how I would always stress about my grades. And she would remind me that she flunked algebra. It's okay. My parents hired my teacher when I worried about getting an A-. Thank you for helping me spread my wings and always making me try new things and go new places. She taught me to be independent. She told me to be the person you want to become. Don't depend on others to get where you want to be. Be yourself. Some of the most important things she taught me were always write a thank you note, the importance of the golden rule. Always end the phone call with, I love you. I love you, Mom. Good job. Thank you for being here, everybody.
I'm also probably not going to look up, so thanks for coming. I feel like a part of me was still a little girl until today. Perhaps a small part of me still is. For the last 4 months, and really the last 20 years, since our mom's first diagnosis with cancer, I never wanted to imagine what this day would be like. But here it is. Experiences like this force you to grow up fast, and as our mom would say, put your big girl panties on. I want to tell y'all a little story that just happened this summer. When my son Charlie was born at the end of May, my mom came to Wichita to stay with us for 2 weeks. I had to have a C-section because she probably told all of you he was ginormous. So I needed a lot of help with Charlie and Levy. She was still doing her maintenance chemo for her lung cancer, so she rearranged her whole chemo schedule so that she could be with us for his birth. She did absolutely everything we needed, and she took care of us. She cooked every meal, she ran every errand, she watched every movie with Libby. You name it, she did it. She slept with Charlie every night for the first 2 weeks of his life and did every nighttime feeding so that Joey and I could rest and I could heal from surgery. She seemed like her old self. She had so much energy. She was having tequila and eating sashimi. And she was glowing, doing what she loved the most. And it was being go-go to my little babies. I feel like God made a deal with me. He gave me those 14 amazing, happy, healthy days with my mom, and I'll cherish that time for the rest of my life. What we didn't know then was that our time with her was running out. She was diagnosed with AML just 7 short weeks later, and our lives changed forever. Standing here today, as I look at my 3 siblings, we've been through so much together. Our precious mom raised us to be strong and independent just like her. I read a quote this week that I wanted to share with you 3 and everyone else that's here today. It takes strength to make your way through grief, to grab hold of life and let it pull you forward. That's exactly what our mom would want us to do. Find the strength to make our way through this. Like everything else we've gone through as a family, we've gotten through it together. And we will get through this too. I hope I can be half the mother to my little babies as she was to me. I love you so much, Mom.
Thank you, Susan and Kathryn. I'm going to ask Bennett to come forward, Margo's grandson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I first want to say thank you for all coming. Being the first grandchild has been pretty awesome. We've had so much adventure together. Me and my dad Go-Go made this name called Camp Go-Go. My dad told me when I was younger, we used to go to Willow Break, drive around the town and see if something to do. I'm the first grandchild and I'm very happy. It's a beautiful first grandchild. I'm pretty sure I'm the favorite. But came. And, it doesn't stop there. Hadley, Knox, Libby, Bear, Mary, Pearson, Walter, Charlie, 11 grandchildren. All of them have Gogo's love, and she gets all their love to all of them. I really miss Gogo, and I wish she was still here to see me grow up. But I know she's right beside me. She'll always be in my heart, and I hope she'll be in all y'all's. Long live Margo Adams.
Thank you, Bennett. And William, I'm going to invite William up. To speak.
So many of y'all know I have 3 boys. Our oldest is 3.5, Bear. And his daycare, they teach him how to calm down. And they teach him to do balloon breaths. So so if I say balloon breath at any point, I'm just doing my best to calm down. I just want to start. Thanks to everyone for being here. This past week has been amazing to see all the people that my mom has touched. Yesterday was Kathryn and I's birthday, and it was a tough one, the toughest one we've ever had. As twins, though, we've always shared our birthday every year of our lives. That's just what twins do. So we're used to that part. What brings me joy is to know that going forward, we'll always be able to share with my mom too. And that she'll be there at every future birthday to celebrate with us. Because as we all know, she never was one to miss a party. When I think of my mom, the theme that resonates the most are her collections. This lady loved her stuff. If she got 2 or 3 of something, that means she needed it all. Battersea boxes, Heron, dolls. The only way I could categorize this was plates that hang on walls. The list is, it's truly endless, and she had just a vigorous passion for collecting things. But those collections did not stop at trinkets or antiques. She collected so many friends. As you can see around this room, she loved her friends and they loved her. Her friendship spanned generations. It was truly remarkable. She had treasured relationships with people decades older than her and decades younger than her and everyone in between. She made being a friend a full-time job. She likely texted or called many of you in here today on your birthday, your anniversary, or any other special occasion. But she was also there for so many of you and so many of us in our hardest moments. That's been such a profound realization this week, is how many people that have talked to us to say that they were going through something difficult, and Margo was there, our mom was there. She loved talking to her friends. So many people have also told me that they talked to her right before they went to bed, or in the morning when they brush their teeth, or when they put their makeup on, and they just had their rhythms, like we all did. She just loved talking to her friends. She cared so much for them. Another passionate collection our mom had were her nonprofit and volunteering roles. When we were writing her obituary, we joked that it may actually be easier to list the ones that she wasn't or hadn't made an impact on. She just loved to get involved and help. She especially loved this congregation, and as Rabbi Levy said, served about every role here except Rabbi. They may both disagree with that at some point then. She was so impactful at places like Hospice of East Texas, Rose Festival, Junior League, Symphony League, PTA, just the list goes on and on. Go-Go loved to help. It's been a true testament to her legacy, how this has come full circle, having spent her final days at hospice. The care was absolutely unmatched. Margie went to pick her up in Houston to go get her personally, and every person we seemed to interact with had their personal Margo story. how she had impacted them. They were also touched by my mom over the years, and while they were so sad and absolutely honored to be able to care for her during her final days. Balloon breath. The next collection are my siblings and I, her kids, the Margo 4, Brian, Susan, Kathryn, and me. She took so much pride in the 4 of us, and we were incredibly lucky to have her. She instilled so many values and lessons in us, like independence, loyalty, loving others, showing up, and most importantly, having fun. Kathryn touched on how close we've all become through this journey, and it's so true. It was one of my mom's last wishes. On Thanksgiving night, with everybody at Brian's house, all 19 of us packed in there, plus my mom, our mom toasted to how this battle has been so tough, but that it's brought her 4 kids so close together, and challenged us that night to keep it that way. And we can't wait to prove her right. An extension of this collection are Gogo's daughter and son-in-laws, or the outlaws as we like to call them. These 4 amazing people had the great fortune of having Gogo as their second mother, and she cherished them all. Big balloon breath. This brings me to my mom's final collection, and the one she prized more than any other, her 11 grandchildren. For 14 years, she's been perfecting this collection, beginning with Bennett, who just beautifully spoke before me, all the way down to the 4 babies at age 1 and under, who I truly believe willed my mom to beat lung cancer in 2020. To look forward to that meant so much to her. Those 11 grandkids, Bennett, Walker, Hill, Hadley and Knox, Libby and Bear, Mary Wynn, Walter, Pearson and Charlie, have also grown extremely close during this time. My mom loved seeing them interact and grow up. Gosh, it just made her heart so happy. We all wish we had more time with Gogo, but we'll treasure the time, moments, pictures, and stories we had with her to ensure her legacy lives on forever. All of these collections, they defined our mom and brought her so much joy. But we can all agree that everyone sitting in this room, we were so fortunate to be a part of her collections. To her 11 grandchildren, my siblings, and to all of you here today, I'd like to close with a quote from the distinguished writer Winnie the Pooh that encapsulates my mom so well. And I wrote here, take a deep breath. How lucky am I to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. I love you, Mom.
We welcome Brian to come forward to share his thoughts.
Okay. God, this is Margo. I'm here. What do you want me to do? I wanted to thank everyone. A number of people helped us honor, support our mother through this battle. It's been amazing. From postcards to letters to video monologues, countless phone calls, text messages, Tyler support, watering orchids, taking care of her house, transporting Tyler newspapers and bills and every magazine and catalog to Houston for the last 150 days. Daily meals, daily visits for all those for the previous past 2 years. We helped my mom during the isolation, not because of COVID, because she had lung cancer for 2 years. My brother and sister-in-laws, all with young babies. My sisters would come all the way to Houston and live with my mom for days at a time, abandoning their families to help comfort my mom. I know that was hard, and I appreciate that. To the countless doctors, nurses, administrative nurses, assistants, hospice nurses. So Kevin Eltime calls down to MD Anderson, calls the president of the hospital and says, I have this patient in there. So in walks the president of the hospital, MD Anderson with his 2 assistants. Margo, these are my 2 assistants, here are their numbers. If you ever need anything, I'll help you. That was a bad idea. She wore those numbers out. I need a new bed. I need this. So thank you to all those people. To Brenda, Debbie, Margie, y'all helped my mom so much in physical form these last days. Thank you for my wife and kids for allowing me to spend so much time with my mom these last 6 months. And I apologize, my mom gave me very specific instructions. Watch over your young children, take care of you and love your wife, raise the boys to be men of character. And when I go to Tyler, I want you to be there with me the entire time. I look at her, I go, the entire time? She goes, yes, you're gonna be with me the entire time. What else, Mom? She goes, I want a big party too. So tomorrow we're having Go-Go's party, 10-piece wedding band, dancing. That's exactly the way she wanted. So come have a good time. So I apologize, my speech is gonna be a long time, but here it is. Today's a sad day, but it's also a great day. My mom's out of pain. She's gone, but she's free from pain. This past 6 months, I've spent more time and had more conversations and argued and battled more with my mom than I have in the past 24 years combined. And for that, I'm thankful for God who gave us this time. I have no regrets. There was nothing that wasn't said, conveyed, or debated. She gave me very clear instruction. As you may know, my mother's what they called controlling. No, really, she was controlling. As I enter this room, it's the first time I've been here for 21 years, and I present to you the Camargo Commandments. Number 1, determination is how. My mother lived in a life of luxury in Chicago. As a young child, her parents were divorced, remarried, new siblings, new last names. Sounds like Tyler. My mother's mother died when she was 18 years old. My mother was not able to see her mother for the last 6 months of her life. My mother was raised and nurtured by her nanny. But she was socially trained by her mom, which is one of the only endearing traits she took with her on her journey. She learned early how to socially mingle with a cocktail in hand and work a room like a pro. She set off to the University of Oklahoma because that was as far as she could get away from Chicago and the first school she applied to. My mother entered college with one clear objective. I'm gonna make this future life better than my previous life, and guess what? I'm gonna be in control of doing it. My mother was determined to make a better life. All she cared about was love, friends, family, and she was determined that nothing was going to stop her. So if you want something, put your head down, go get it, and don't let anyone stop you. The second one, no whining, no crying, be strong. Shoot, it's been hard. Mom never once, through breast cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer, AML, ever complained, not one time. Until last Sunday when she said to me, I didn't know it was gonna be this hard and hurt this much. Mom was a warrior. She was a true delegator. Now, she didn't leave Chicago with a lot of empathy from being comforted and loved. Actually, I'm not quite sure my mother was hugged more than 10 times as a child. Margo showed her love in other ways. Now, you could go whine to my mom, but she would ultimately tell you to quit whining, be strong, and put on your big boy pants. Now, she told me I don't want anyone crying when I get to Tyler and when they come see me. She even had someone make a sign. Sorry, Mom, we broke the rule, but we promise we'll never forget the lesson. So everyone, no crying, no whining, be strong. Be curious, third one. Although my mom didn't have a formal degree, my mother had a master's in medicine, medical treatment, oncology, psychology, sociology, marital parenting, abuse parenting, legal studies, legal research, social interaction, party and event planning, fundraising, trust and wills, communication, and research and deployment, AKA gossiping. So I learned that if you want to learn something, you need to be curious. She was a master at getting out of you. Before you even knew it, it sounded like this. Who was there? Who were they with? What were they doing? Who did they come with? Who did they talk to? And by the end of it, it was all out of you. So I was honored to learn from the best. So the lesson, if you want to learn something, be curious. It'll take you far in life. Number 4, be an example. My mom would say, people lie. Just watch what they do. That's who they are. My mother was Facebook before Facebook. Just like William said, she called every one of you on your birthday, anniversary, death, of your divorce, everything, and she knew the exact year it was. My mother had a day planner 6 inches thick with not one to-do in there that made any money. It was on how to be a better friend, a better mother, a better example, a better philanthropist, a better person. She didn't want you to brag about her. She wanted you to walk away with that interaction with you in a positive attitude. She wanted you to say to yourself, man, that's a force and I want to be a better person. She wanted you to fly higher. She wanted you to have more success. She wanted you to grow. She only wanted the absolute best for each one of you. She was not selfish. She wanted nothing out of it. She found great joy in giving each of you more joy in your heart. That was her octane fuel. My mother held a job for about 3 to 4 years. She was a school teacher in South Oak Cliff, where I am certain she was the only 5-foot-tall Jewish Jap from Chicago and one of the only Caucasians. Now you see, my mother didn't know race. My mother classified people by their etiquette and how they treated others. She didn't care where you came from. She didn't care who you were. She didn't care what color you are, what you had, or what school you came from. She cared nothing about that. She only cared that you did the right thing and you treated others right. So the story goes like this. A very large child from South Dallas, her student disrespects her. So she shows up the next day with her sorority paddle, ready to slam him, says, you're not going to disrespect me. So don't talk about it. Be the example. Talk is cheap. Be proud. I learned yesterday there's 120 Jewish people basically in the county of Smith County, a county of about 140,000 people. So being Jewish in Tyler, Texas was super easy. Some people thought you might have been an alien. My mother was super proud to be Jewish. She embraced the struggles that the Jewish people went through. Now, my mother grew up in a town of Highland Park where she had 300 Jewish people in her grade, which was a lot easier. But when asked about being Jewish, I've been asked a lot what happens when Jewish people die. And the answer is they go back and become one with God, and their spirits live on forever. But they're ultimately judged by what's called a mitzvah, and that's the good they did on earth, which means how much good did they do on earth at that time. My mother is going to be fine. She's going to go be with God. My mother was not a theologist or an Orthodox Jewish believer. My mother was a social Jew, as I call it. However, during our last days, we talked a lot about God. Recently, God has been talking to me and it's super loud. And so on Monday night, we're sitting at hospice, and so 4 of us all having a slumber party around my mom. I pop up about 3 o'clock in the morning. I go, did y'all hear that? They're like, what? I said, God just talked to me. And they're like, what did he say? What did he say? I said, Mom's trying to control everything. And God said, no, it's not time yet. He said, we're not ready. We need to have a conversation about who's going to be in control here. So I favor new pillows in from Bed Bath & Beyond because I figure I'm going to be here for about 4 weeks as they argue. So for the last 24 hours of my mom's life, they were spent with her and God talking. And she finally agreed that she'll ride shotgun, but she has to be in control of her welcome party list. So the lesson is be proud in your faith. Be independent. My mother was very, very clear that she wanted her kids to be independent and not rely on anyone. She wanted us to be strong. She wanted us to make our own way, to make a difference and to leave a mark. My mom was independent. She did it her way. I used to tell Kelly, 99% of the people believe one way, 1% believe the other way. That's my mom. So don't be afraid to be independent. Be fun. You invited my mom to a party, she showed up. Stayed late, and there wasn't a person she didn't talk to. So be fun. For about 12 Christmas Eves, it was just me and my mom alone. And since she had no family in Tyler, we'd go on this progressive tour from house to house to house on Christmas Eve. From the Hineses to the Wolderts to the Browns to the Claywaters to the Davis. You all were so wonderful to my mom. You welcomed her like family. And when I say you all, I mean Tyler, Texas. Tyler was such a great place to grow up. You know, everyone's up in each other's business, and maybe my mom was the ringleader of that circus. But everyone was such a great friend to my mom, or maybe my mom was a good friend to them. But either way, be a friend to everyone. Only got 2 more. Be the best. Whether it was being a president of an organization, hosting a party, being on the grand jury, that's the other one. Being a mother, being go-go, she only knew how to do it one way, and that was with 100% effort. She was going to give it all she had. My mom was a winner. She was the best. And she wants everyone to give it their best regardless of what you're doing. She wants you to be a winner. Finally, I missed one story. This is kind of funny. About being fun, we had this big party on Thanksgiving. And I had these musicians, and I had all these people outside, great musicians. And this one musician lights up a cigarette, and my father-in-law, and you know, their eyes just pop open. Sheila Leatherwood's there. They're like, I tell the Penny Lane lady, I said, can you tell her to put out the cigarette? She has lung cancer. She's flustered and shamed. So when it's done, I kind of make light of the situation. You know, lung cancer, you know, no immune system, and cigarette smoke don't go well together. My mother in a weak voice go, I thought it smelled real good. So be awesome. Y'all been sending cards and gifts to my house by the hundreds. We had to have a conversation about not letting people come to this. We don't have enough room. We all are talking about how big of a hole Tyler's going to have in it. So I always have the thought, you know, who's the richest guy? Or who's the richest person? Is it the one with the most houses? Is it the one with the most medals? The most trophies? The most money? No, it's the one with the most moments. See, a moment is a capture in time in which is burned to your brain forever. It's like your favorite picture in your phone. My mother was so rich. She had the best moments. She made the most of every moment of her life. She certainly didn't let the grass grow under her feet. She was a go-going. Because I look at all these people, you've had so many rich moments with my mom. I know my mom's not gone. She's just taking on a different role. She's going to be our angel. So, Mom, thanks for being awesome. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm honored to be your son. I promise to make you proud. And we'll talk every night when I'm asleep. Onwards and upwards.
You can see that we are boneh, built up through our bonim, our children. And this is where Margo's real estate lay. Balloon breath. Every day when I sit in the conference room here at the temple down the hall, I'm meeting with students or teaching a class or studying. I sit in a chair that sits opposite the wall of the photos of the congregational presidents. And so every day I inevitably look up and I see that I'm being watched over by those generations of presidents who are still keeping an eye on things. And of course, right there staring at me, bottom row, third in from the right, is Margo, smiling. As she guided me all these years, and with that picture on the wall, she continues to be a presence. I'm so grateful to have been in her orbit, and she's been so important to this congregation and all of the rabbis who've led this community. So as I share my own words here, I'm thankful to incorporate some of the memories of Margo that were shared with me by my predecessor, Rabbi Steve Gold. He's up in New Jersey. He couldn't be here, but he and his wife Cindy send their condolences. Rabbi Gold shared that when he arrived, Margo was the very first person he met in Tyler. By the way, a theme, right? So Rabbi Levy, me, Steve. And it's because she greeted him at the airport when he came in for his first interview. This is back in 1989. And he said that being a Northeastern Yankee, he didn't realize in 1989 that most Texans drove either a Chevy Suburban or some kind of truck, but he remembered that he had to climb up into Margo's big, bright red Suburban and think, boy, this is a big vehicle for a small lady. But like so many of us, Margo became that person to whom Rabbi Gold turned for all kinds of advice, becoming a surrogate sister, he said. So he turned to her for parenting advice and housing advice. He lived at her house, I think in their guest house, for the first period of time that he was here. He used her for communal advice, professional advice. But as we know, it was a role that Margo loved. He shared that Margo was so encouraging and patient, but also unhesitating when she felt that she needed to tell him that he was wrong about something or called him out on something. And for that, I can relate. But in all seriousness, there's a level of emotional intelligence about how you accept that constructive criticism when it comes from such a place of love, because it makes us better. There were times that Rabbi Gold would complain to Margo about this or that, and she listened to him patiently for a bit, but she would soon tell him, as we heard a minute ago, to quit his whining. And he said that in her unique and unabashed way, Margo would toughen him up and helped him grow up. So how did he thank her? He waited until she was the temple president to quit and to move to a new congregation. But she was as supportive then as she always had been. In 1998, when Rabbi Gold left Tyler, Bethel could not find a new rabbi to replace. There was a rabbi shortage and the applicants weren't really matches. And so they entered something called the student rabbi program, where they would fly down for a year. They would fly down a student rabbi from the Cincinnati campus of Hebrew Union College. And this went on for 5 years. 2 of those 5 years, it happened to be me, so we'll get to that in a moment. But the main point of contact for those students, the house mother, so to speak, was Margo. And so Margo would see to it that the students, who are now Rabbis David Kaufman, Rabbi Dan Plotkin, Rabbi Alan Cook, and again myself, that we were set up for dinners with members of the temple. And she would arrange speaking or social engagements around town. She would introduce us around the community, give us a key. She would attend worship services. She would talk during them. And she took care of us if we weren't feeling well. That was her famous thing. She would never come to the service to pray. She would come to there's an old joke, right? Just old joke, Meyer and Sam go to services every Shabbat together for 50 years. And finally the rabbi says, you two have been coming devotedly for 50 years to the services. Meyer and Sam, why do you come to services? And Meyer says, I come to talk to God. And Sam says, I come to talk to Meyer. Right? Both are valid. They're both part of all of our communities. But for the student rabbis, Margo was our house mother. She was ever present in our lives. She took care of us as she took care of her own children. So when I returned to Cincinnati to finish up my studies, I had an informal agreement with the congregation that a year later, when it came time for me to graduate, to be ordained, that I would not apply to any other job offer. I would not enter what was called placement, and I would receive a call. Oh wait, that's the call. I'm just kidding. It happens. It's okay. So somebody's calling to say, speed it up, Rabbi. I know how that works. When I was so I would go back to Cincinnati, and I had this agreement that I was not going to apply anywhere else. It's okay. That's right. It's actually about a phone call, this little story, by the way. Perfect. Sorry. No, you're fine. You're fine. That was your mom's pre-recorded announcement saying, tell the rabbi to finish up. So I was not part of what's called placement. I let all my other classmates struggle and apply to congregations around the country and stress out. And then came match day. And there was, at 9 a.m., there was literally a piece of paper posted on the door at the dean's office in Cincinnati, and all the student rabbis huddled around this door to see at 9 a.m. where they had been matched. Now, I wasn't on the list because I hadn't applied anywhere, waiting for that to happen. Then I became, so to speak, independent or a free agent. I could apply anywhere. That was the setup. So at 9 o'clock, that got posted, and like a spidey sense tingling, Margo called me at 9:02. So I looked down, and I know it's her, so hi, Margo, and this was my interview. She goes, you want the job? Literally exactly as I said, I'd be honored. She said, I'll let him know, and she hung up. That was absolutely how I was interviewed. And a few weeks later, I received an official call, another story, from our congregational president at the time, Pam Listener. When I came to Tyler, Margo became something of a role model for me as far as communal involvement, because as a new rabbi, I would study the organizations, the nonprofits where our members were active. And so Margo sort of led me to a number of the places that I became active with. She was active at Path. She introduced me there, so I became active at Path. She talked to me about the holy work of Hospice of East Texas. I became active at Hospice of East Texas, and on and on and on. But I did that not only with Margo, but with a number of our congregants, kind of appreciating the role that our congregants played in the communal uplift here in Tyler. But there are so many organizations here in Tyler that bear Margo's heartprint. She was so many things to so many people because she was fully present wherever she was and with whomever she was. So here we've talked about not only how involved she was at the temple, but I want to share just for a few sentences why that's important to me. Because her role here at the temple cannot be overstated. We are a small Jewish community, as Brian said, and so we rely heavily on the talent and the wisdom and the energy of people like Margo to remain vibrant. And I thank her for her service in keeping this congregation vibrant and strong. Rabbi Gold's wife, Cindy, shared this nice summation. Margo, we've all said this at one point, was a force of nature. I'll close with a little story. Years ago, there was a tale about a famous rabbi named Elimelech. And the hour of his death came close, and he lay on his deathbed, and he placed his hands on the foreheads of his 4 children. And he gave them each a portion of his soul. To one child, he gave the light of his eyes. To another, he gave his heart. To a third child, he gave his mind. And to the final child, he gave the power of his tongue. This beautiful story is so perfect as we remember Margo today. That we should live so that when we die, there will continue to be a light in our eyes worth someone's guarding. That a heart will be there for someone to remember. There will be a mind worth recalling, and a tongue whose wisdom death does not still. Zichrono levracha, may Margo's memory always be for a blessing. Amen. We turn to a traditional text in the Jewish funeral and burial service. We're coming close to the end of this portion. It's called El Malei Rachamim, and I'd like to invite Rabbi Levy back up. El Malei Rachamim is a text which simply says God is full of mercy. So as we are in this moment of grief, we acknowledge God's mercy. And so Rabbi Levy is going to share the English of El Malei Rachamim, and then in a moment I'm going to ask us to stand and I'll chant the text.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Margo Adams to Margalit Bat Daniel Babatya, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. Indeed, God is her inheritance. May she now rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen.
Amen. If you are able to stand, please do so as I chant those words. El male rachamim, shochen bamromim, hamse menucha nechona tachat kanfei ha-shechinah, im kedoshim utorim, kezoha harakia masirim, et nishmat Margalit bat Daniel v'Batya, shehalcha la'olama, ba'al harachamim, yastireha beseter knafav la'olamim, vayitzror bitzror hachayim et nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, vatanuach bashalom al mishkava, v'nomar, Amen. Please be seated. At this time, this portion of the service is concluded. We are going to move to the burial portion of the service, where we're going to first remain seated, and the funeral home directors will escort Margo out to the hearse, followed by the family, and then I'm going to ask you all to line up as we head over to Rose Hill. By the way, Margo was in charge of Rose Hill for our congregation, so we had to scramble with all of these details, because who knew them? Margo knew them. But we are heading over to Rose Hill to continue our burial service. So we'll take a moment as the casket is removed.
Would you all stand, please?
We welcome back one another to this moment of burial, and we welcome back our friends online. As we continue this ceremony, I was advised, Margo made arrangements that it's okay that it's cloudy, won't rain though, as long as we keep it short. That's what was told, which is true, but it was wonderful to have that moment there at the temple, which is something she was adamant about, that we got to share in those memories, listen to the memories of her children and grandson. And so as we reconvene at this graveside, we hear a text that comes from Isaiah. A voice cries out and says, "What shall I cry? I know that all flesh is grass, and that all beauty is like the flower of the field. We know that the grass withers, that the flower fades, when the wind of the Lord blows upon it. Surely," Isaiah said, "the people are grass. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God endures forever."
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in the divine image, who nourishes and sustains us in your goodness, and who causes all of us to die, and who implants immortal life within us. Baruch atah Adonai, Dayan ha'emet.
At this time, I'm going to ask the funeral directors to lower the casket. And as they do it, I'll just share with you, for those who are new to the Jewish burial ceremony, I always share that there are 3 moments in the Jewish burial where we emphasize finality. The first is actually witnessing the lowering of the casket into the ground. We are taught that the highest mitzvah, the highest deed, is to accompany a loved one to their final resting place, because it is a deed that can never be repaid. And so this is one moment of finality. The second will be in a moment where we take earth and we shovel it onto the gravesite. If we go back many years, we didn't have the wonderful funeral homes that we have now, and it was our responsibility not only to dig the gravesite but also to cover it. And so symbolically, in a moment, I'll invite you who wish to place earth into the gravesite. And the third moment of finality is the text of Kaddish, which will be read by Rabbi Levy. It is the text of mourning that we recite upon the death of somebody, actually on a daily basis for some people, and certainly at their yearly yahrzeits, death anniversaries. So we take a moment of silence as Margo is lowered into the ground, and then we'll continue. Amikoma Tavo Bashalom. May Margo come to her eternal home in peace. May those who mourn the loss of our beloved Margo find comfort in the hope that, though dust returns to the earth as it was, the spirit returns to God who gave it. Death is not the end. Those we love have passed through the gateway of the grave into the peace of life eternal. We know that all of us must tread that same path, though we know not when that hour may come. Let us so live that the coming of that hour shall find us unafraid. May our deeds do honor to the memory of our beloved Margo, whom you have taken to yourself, O God. So trusting in your wisdom and loving kindness, we praise your name.
On our way over to the cemetery, we were told by Corky that Margo had particularly picked this spot so she could see anybody coming in and going out, make that final judgment on who's worthy and who is not worthy to pass by here. So if you're coming in for whatever reason to visit a loved one, make sure you pay your respects as you come in and let her know that you are worthy. We ask you to rise, please. And for those who would like to join in the Kaddish that talks about God and talks about peace and talks about love. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah v'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agala uv'yizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach leolam ulalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithalei v'yithalal shemei dekudisha barichu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata ta'amiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemai v'chayim Aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen, oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May God grant peace to those who mourn, and comfort all the bereaved among us, and we say together, Amen.
You may be seated. In just a moment, as we conclude this burial, I'm going to ask initially the family members who would like to. It's not required, it's a custom, but to take a shovel and to scoop some earth into the gravesite. We have a tradition, again, it's not halakha, it's not Jewish law, but it's a custom that we scoop. There's two pieces of it. One that we scoop using the back side of the shovel to make it more difficult, not the scoop side, right? To show our reluctance to do this very deed. And the other thing is that we don't, you can, but traditionally we don't pass the shovel to the next person. We put it back down on the pile and let the next person pick up the shovel. Why? To symbolize that we don't pass grief to grief, that everybody grieves in their own individual ways, and so we all have our own personal moment. So in a moment, I'm going to invite the family up at the conclusion to shovel some earth, and then if anybody would like to do so, you're welcome. I'm also going to place some earth from Israel in the gravesite, and then you can meet with the family. Know that tomorrow, as Brian mentioned, there's going to be a party. It's a celebration, but it's a party at Willowbrook from 1 to 3. And everybody is invited to attend. It'll be an outright party for Margo as she asked for, and the kids have planned. So that'll be a celebration where you can spend time with the family and more of an extended time with them. And that'll be tomorrow from 1 to 3 at Willowbrook. Lech ki shahalach Adonai. Margo, go your way, for God has called you. Go your way, and may God be with you. May you receive righteousness, and may your righteousness go before you, and may the glory of God receive you. Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch sha'arei avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God console you with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. We now go forth into life. We now go forth into peace. Amen. So at this time, I'd like to invite up any family members to come forward who would like to do so. Just be careful. If you want to come on this side, you can use both shovels as well, if you kind of make that line on that side. And then this concludes our ceremony, but I'm going to leave it on Zoom for a little while.
Popped up first because I think that's what my mom would have done.